Now for something completely different. I'd like to start this bit with a question, and then the answer to it. The question I was asking myself earlier in the day, should I do a section of tonight's show on the new chatbot that everyone's talking about? What are the pros and cons of doing that? Here's the answer. Some potential advantages of doing a radio segment on chatbots might include the opportunity to educate listeners about this emerging technology, the ability to showcase the capabilities of chatbots, and the potential to generate interest and curiosity in chatbots among listeners. Some potential disadvantages might include the challenge of explaining complex technical concepts in a way that's accessible to a general audience, the need to balance the positive and negative aspects of chatbots, and the risk of boring or confusing listeners if the segment isn't well planned and executed. So, did you guess? That answer didn't come from me or any other human being. It was generated by artificial intelligence after I typed my question into a chatbot called ChatGPT. That was a computer talking. For decades, science fiction writers have speculated about what might happen when we met artificial intelligence so sophisticated, shrewd, and even at times so funny we couldn't tell the difference between it and a human being. What happens if it's cleverer than we are? Well, with the release of ChatGPT, it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, this week it's no longer science fiction. In the 5 days since it was released by its San Francisco creator, more than 1 million people have already signed up to it. There are already predictions that this technology will obliterate Google, but it also raised scary ethical and employment issues. Dr. Mhairi Aitken from the Alan Turing Institute joins me. Mhairi, before we get on to the difficult technical issues, just give us a sense of the kind of things this chatbot can do, because you can ask quite complicated questions and it will produce letters, essays, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, it can do all kinds of things. It's a conversational chatbot, so you can have a back and forth conversation with it, and you can ask it to create text in all kinds of styles. So just as you did, you can ask it to create an intro to your show. It could create prose, it could create poetry, it could create perhaps convincing legal text. It could create all kinds of things, and you can specify the kind of text you want it to give you.
I've been observing people online all day doing things. Somebody was saying, I want to write a letter to my local MP suggesting that it's important to absolutely concrete over Hampstead Heath with 10-storey tower blocks. And there came the letter, making all the good arguments for covering Hampstead Heath with concrete to an MP. And other people suggesting that it's actually producing perfectly acceptable sort of exam-level essays for students on history and anything else.
Yeah, there's lots of examples of this all over social media at the moment. Real concerns that it could, certainly for essays or for assignments, it can create very convincing, well-structured, convincing essays and outputs that seem like they've been created by a human. It can also create, as you said, letters to MPs. It could create kind of campaigning material that could be very convincing, that seems like it's been written by a human.
So those are obvious ethical questions. Who's behind this there? But also because it learns from your prompt. So in other words, the more you interact with it, the more it picks up lessons and changes and becomes more sophisticated. That follows that if you give it kind of really offensive or racist prompts, it will become more and more offensive itself.
Well, we've seen this in the past with previous chatbots. I mean, in 2016, Microsoft released their chatbot Tay onto Twitter. And the idea was that would be a chatbot that people could interact with on Twitter. And in that case,
how long did it last?
16 hours.
16 hours before it became too offensive. Yeah,
it had to be shut down because it replicates the environment that it was in, and it quickly became, it was using racist slurs, it was using derogatory language, became very offensive. Now, in this instance, ChatGPT has been trained on an offline data set. So it's not yet loose on the internet. It's not learning from the whole of the internet, but it's learning from a huge data set, a huge data set, but an offline data set. And there are some safeguards in it, in that you can't ask it to write something explicitly offensive. And there are some safeguards around that. And if you put in a prompt where you're explicitly looking for something offensive, it will come back and flag it as being out with the bounds of acceptable use. But of course, if it becomes loose on the internet, that might be a different story.
Sure. This is just a glimpse of the near future. It suggests to me that from now on, anything that comes in through a screen or on your phone, you can't be sure whether it's a computer speaking to you or a human being, because this thing can make jokes as well, can't it?
Yeah, it can. And some of them are actually funny, which I think has not been possible with previous chatbots, but some are actually funny. I think that is a real concern because, these large language models have been trained with the explicit intention of replicating human-like conversational text. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to converse with you in a way which is like a human. So inevitably, they are at times going to make people feel like they are interacting with a human. And I think we need to think really carefully about the safeguards that need to be in place to ensure that we're not deceiving people.
Quite right. Mhairi, thank you very much. It just reflects on my reflection is that if you are sitting at home this Christmas because of all these strikes and you can't go anywhere, here is one way you might be able to entertain yourself. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player.